Leave me. I can't walk. Those were the words Amelia Hartwell, one of Seattle's most powerful CEOs, whispered as smoke swallowed the 44th floor stairwell, and everyone she trusted kept running. Then a maintenance worker turned back. Luke Mercer was a widowed single father with worn boots, tired eyes, and a 9-year-old daughter waiting several floors below. He had no reason to risk his life for a woman who had barely noticed him before, but when he saw Amelia on the concrete, one hand gripping the rail and the other hiding the truth she had buried for years, he made a choice that would expose far more than a corporate secret. This is not only a rescue story, it is about dignity, hidden pain, and the kind of love that begins when someone refuses to leave. Stay to the end. Like the video and tell us where you are watching from. Long before Amelia Hartwell whispered those words in the smoke, Luke Mercer was standing barefoot in a narrow kitchen, cutting an apple into slices while rain pressed softly against the windows. It was 5:17 in this morning, and West Seattle was still dark. The apartment above the bakery was small. The heater groaned every time it woke, and the floor leaned slightly toward the front door. Nothing inside it was neglected. Luke moved quietly so he would not wake his daughter. He spread peanut butter across 2 pieces of wheat bread, folded them together, and trimmed the edges because Sophie claimed crusts made sandwiches taste angry. He packed apple slices into a plastic container, dusted them with cinnamon, then reached for a square of yellow paper. His handwriting was careful. You do not have to be the loudest person in the room to be brave. He folded the note and tucked it beneath her napkin. A framed photograph rested beside the sink. Luke stood near Puget Sound with one arm around his wife and the other around a much smaller Sophie. Rachel Mercer was laughing at something outside the frame, and Luke had been looking at her instead of the camera. 4 years had passed. Some mornings he still reached for a second coffee mug. A floorboard creaked behind him. Sophie stood in the kitchen doorway wearing purple pajama pants and 2 different socks. Her brown hair rose on one side as if she had been arguing with the pillow. She squinted at the clock. "You are doing it again." Luke slid the lunchbox closed. Doing what? Pretending 5 in the morning is a normal time to be awake. It is normal for bakers. You are not a baker, we live above one. It might be contagious. Sophie dragged herself to the table. "You were fixing the heater last night. It was making a noise. You make noises. I still let you live here." Luke poured her a glass of milk. Sophie looked at the lunchbox, then at him. Friday. Luke knew what she meant. Her class presentation on Seattle history was Friday afternoon. Sophie had spent 3 weeks building a cardboard model of the old Smith Tower. "I remember. You said that last time." His hand paused against the counter. Last time a pipe had burst on the 32nd floor of Harbor Rise Tower. By the time Luke reached the school, the classroom lights were off and Sophie was sitting alone with her teacher, holding a certificate she had stopped caring about. "I will be there," he said. She studied him with the serious expression children use when deciding whether to risk hope. "Promise." Luke crossed the room and crouched beside her chair. "Promise." Sophie lifted her little finger. He hooked his around it. Only then did she drink her milk. Across the city, Amelia Hartwell stood alone in a bathroom made of white marble and glass, gripping the edge of a sink until the numbness in her left leg began to fade. The waterfront below her windows was hidden beneath morning rain. Ferries moved through the gray like dim lanterns. Seattle looked soft from 40 floors above, as though nothing down there could reach her. Amelia counted backward in silence. 10, 9, 8. At 6, the muscles in her thigh twitched. At 3, feeling returned to her foot in a burst of needles. She released the sink slowly. The woman in the mirror looked composed. Her blonde hair was pinned into a smooth knot, and makeup concealed the sleeplessness beneath her eyes. Nothing about her reflection suggested that she had spent the last 4 minutes terrified of the distance to the bedroom. She opened a locked cabinet containing medication, a folding cane, and black flats. She took the pills and left the cane where it was. When she entered the bedroom, her assistant was waiting beside a garment bag, scrolling through the day's schedule. Tessa Monroe glanced up. "You are limping." "I am walking." That was not the point. Amelia picked up a pair of heels from the chair. Tessa watched her. "The board meeting can be moved." "No." "The launch rehearsal can be handled by product." "No." Physical therapy cannot keep being treated like a suggestion. Amelia slid one foot into a shoe and steadied herself against the bed where Tessa could not see. Neither can the most important presentation in the company's history. Tessa lowered her tablet. Nolan asked whether you are still medically cleared to lead. Amelia looked at her. What did you say? I said your medical information was private. He said it becomes a board matter when it affects performance. Amelia fastened the second shoe. Then give him more work. Busy men have less time for gossip. Tessa did not smile. This is not gossip. Amelia reached for her jacket. No, it is strategy. At 8:30, the executive conference room at Harbor Rise Neurotech was already filled. The tower rose above South Lake Union in 46 floors of steel and blue glass. Its lobby displayed photographs of children and veterans standing with the help of Harbor Rise devices. Amelia's mother had founded the company in a rented laboratory. Amelia had inherited it at 31 and spent 7 years proving she deserved it. A black model of the Astra mobility frame stood at the center of the conference room beneath a cloth cover. The device would be revealed that evening before investors, physicians, and national press. A successful launch could secure a major federal rehabilitation contract. Failure would strengthen the board members supporting an acquisition. Nolan Price sat across from Amelia with both hands folded on the table. He was 52, silver-haired, and so controlled that even his pauses seemed rehearsed. The offer expires Friday, he said. We should vote before emotion around the launch distorts the valuation. Amelia opened the financial packet in front of her. The offer removes the patient access program. It restructures an unsustainable expense. It closes 4 clinics. It improves margin. It abandons 1,800 patients. Nolan leaned back. We are a technology company, Amelia. We are not a charity. She looked toward the covered mobility frame. We build devices for people who have already lost enough. A director near the end of the table cleared his throat. No one is questioning the mission. Nolan turned slightly toward him. We are questioning whether the mission is being used to justify poor discipline. Amelia kept her eyes on Nolan. And I am questioning why every proposal you make requires someone with less power to lose something. A silence settled over the room. Nolan smiled faintly. You make that sound personal. It becomes personal when the people losing care have names. After the meeting, Nolan watched Amelia cross the corridor. Her right step was smooth. Her left was half a beat slower. Gavin Ross approached from the service hall carrying a tablet against his chest. He was broad-shouldered, anxious, and dressed in a building operations jacket. Nolan waited until Amelia entered her office. Tonight, he said quietly, the board needs clarity. Gavin looked toward the glass walls. You said the elevator only. The elevator, the lights, and the private stair access. That is not a timing adjustment. It is a controlled interruption. If someone checks the override logs, they will know. Nolan removed an access badge from his pocket and placed it in Gavin's hand. The photograph belonged to Luke Mercer. They will see a maintenance employee entered the corridor. Gavin stared at the badge. What if she does not use the stairs? She will. She would rather crawl down 40 floors than let the board see her carried. At 9:15, Luke arrived at Harbor Rise with a steel travel mug in one hand and a toolbox in the other. He had dropped Sophie at school 20 minutes earlier, her cardboard tower riding carefully in the back seat. The loading entrance guard waved him through without looking up. Morning maintenance. Morning, Carl. Carl blinked, surprised Luke knew his name. On the 39th floor, Luke found a damaged access panel outside the executive elevator. The door track had been stalling during humid weather, and the building software kept marking the problem as resolved. He removed the cover and knelt beside the wiring. A soft bell sounded. The elevator doors opened 3 inches, stopped, then shuddered apart. Amelia stood inside. For a moment, neither of them moved. Her hand was pressed flat against the mirrored wall. The color had drained from her face. One knee was slightly bent beneath her dress. Luke looked down at the track instead of at her. The sensor caught. I noticed. He held the door open with one hand. Take your time. Her eyes cooled. I am fine. Luke glanced at the trembling metal door. I was talking to the elevator. Something unexpected touched her expression. Not quite a smile. Close enough that Luke noticed. Amelia stepped forward. Her heel met the floor unevenly and her left leg hesitated before following. Luke turned back to the panel before she could catch him watching. She stopped several feet away. "You are Luke, correct?" He looked up. Most executives called him maintenance, even when his name was printed on his shirt. "Yes, ma'am. You repaired the conference heating system last month." "Yes, it has been too warm ever since." Luke nodded thoughtfully. "That means the board is producing more hot air than the system can remove." Amelia stared at him. Luke returned to the wiring. "I will recalibrate it." He heard her walk away. This time the smile in her voice was clear. "Please do." By late afternoon, white lights illuminated the lobby. Caterers moved through service corridors. Technicians tested microphones and reporters gathered near the covered Astra frame. Luke spent most of the day moving between alarms that were not emergencies and executives who treated discomfort like disaster. The West Conference Room was too cold. The donor lounge lights were too bright. A floral display blocked a camera angle. At 5, he was assigned to repair a loose handrail near the Employee Child Care Center. Sophie sat inside with a small group of children whose parents were working the evening event. She was coloring at a low table, her tongue pressed against one corner of her mouth. She noticed Luke through the glass and hurried out. "You are doing it wrong." Luke tightened the last bolt. "That is serious criticism from someone using a green crayon on a purple horse. It is modern art." Amelia entered the corridor with Tessa beside her. She had changed into a dark blue evening dress. The heels were higher now. Her posture was perfect, though Luke noticed how carefully she placed each step. Sophie looked at Amelia's visitor badge, then at the two people waiting behind her. "Are you important?" Tessa covered a laugh with a cough. Amelia looked down at Sophie. "Some days. My dad says important people are usually the reason he has to work late." Luke closed his eyes briefly. "Sophie." Amelia's mouth curved. "And who are you, Sophie Mercer?" "I am quality control. For the building for him." She pointed at Luke. "He forgets dinner." Amelia looked at the travel mug near Luke's toolbox. "Does coffee count?" "No." Luke stood. "I am being criticized from both sides now." Amelia's gaze lingered on him. Perhaps quality control has identified a recurring defect. For a second, there were no board members or titles. There was only a tired father, a watchful child, and a woman who had forgotten how natural laughter could feel. Then Tessa reminded Amelia that rehearsal had begun. Amelia nodded and walked away. Sophie watched her go. "She likes you." Luke picked up his wrench. "She met me twice. That was not a no." At 6:42, Luke reached for his security badge and found the clip empty. He checked his pockets, toolbox, and the mechanical room where he had changed filters. Nothing. He found Gavin beside service elevator 3. "My badge is missing." Gavin barely looked away from his tablet. "Use a temporary. Deactivate the old one first. We are 30 minutes from launch. An active badge can reach emergency controls." Gavin's eyes lifted. "Your job tonight is to keep the building running, not tell me how to manage security. My job includes reporting access risks, and you reported it." Gavin pulled a temporary badge from his pocket and pushed it into Luke's hand. "We will deal with the rest tomorrow." Luke held his gaze for a moment, then entered the loss report into his maintenance tablet. At 7, Amelia stepped onto the stage beneath a field of white lights. The audience fell silent. Behind her, the black cloth was lifted from the Astra Mobility frame. The machine gleamed beneath the cameras, delicate and strong, designed to help damaged nerves communicate with muscles that had stopped listening. Amelia placed one hand against the podium. Her left foot had begun to numb again. No one could see it. "We created Astra. For the moment, a patient is told to lower their expectations," she said. "For the moment, hope is reduced to a percentage, a chart, or an insurance code." At the back of the room, Luke checked a pressure warning. A second alert appeared. "Fire door override. Manual access detected." Luke looked toward the service corridor. Across the room, Nolan watched Amelia. Far below them, Gavin held Luke's missing badge against the restricted panel. The lights went out. A glass shattered in the darkness. Then the alarm began. The alarm rose through the darkness before anyone understood what had happened. For 1 second, the ballroom remained perfectly still. Then emergency lights flashed red along the walls, and the room broke apart. Guests shouted over one another. Chairs scraped against the floor. Someone near the stage screamed that the elevators had stopped. The elegant presentation space became a maze of overturned glasses, abandoned handbags, and bodies pushing toward the nearest exit. Amelia kept one hand on the podium. Her left foot had gone completely numb. Tessa reached her first. "Amelia, we need to move, I know. You cannot take the stairs like this." Amelia looked toward the board members gathering near the private exit. Nolan stood among them, speaking calmly to a security officer as if the emergency belonged to someone else. He met her eyes across the room. There was no surprise in his face, only calculation. A thin stream of smoke slipped beneath the doors near the service corridor. The security officer shouted for everyone to use the eastern stairwell. Tessa took Amelia by the arm. "Lean on me." Amelia pulled away before anyone could see. "I said I can walk." She stepped from behind the podium. Her right foot landed. Her left leg followed half a second too late. The room tilted. Tessa caught her elbow. A camera turned toward them. Amelia straightened before the reporter could focus. "Help the guests," she said. "I am helping you." "That is not what they need to see. Stop talking about what they need to see." Another alarm sounded louder than the first. A ceiling panel near the service entrance sparked. The crowd surged toward the stairwell. 2 members of the board passed Amelia without stopping. One of them glanced at her uneven step, then quickly looked away. Nolan approached. "Claire," he began, then corrected himself. "Amelia, the board is moving to the lower lobby." "I can see that. You should wait for medical assistance." Tessa looked at him. "The smoke is spreading." Nolan's voice remained soft. "Then we should avoid creating panic." Amelia stared at him. The words were polished, but their meaning was clear. "Do not let them see you fall." A crash sounded behind the stage. The overhead lights flickered once, then died completely. Tessa pulled Amelia toward the private stairwell. They entered with the final group of executives. The concrete steps were narrow. Red emergency lights pulsed against the walls. The air already smelled of hot wiring and dust. Amelia gripped the handrail, one step, then another. Her left leg dragged slightly behind her. People pressed close from above. Every time she slowed, the crowd tightened. "Keep moving," someone shouted. Tessa placed herself between Amelia and the people behind them. "Give her space." A man in a tuxedo pushed past. "We do not have time for this." Amelia recognized him as a donor who had shaken her hand less than an hour earlier. He did not recognize her now. Or perhaps he did. The thought hurt more than her leg. At the 44th floor landing, a fire door slammed shut behind them. The impact shook the railing. Amelia's left knee folded. She hit the concrete hard enough to lose her breath. Her heel snapped beneath her. Tessa knelt beside her. "Amelia, I am fine. You are not." The words came too loudly. Several people turned. Nolan stood 2 flights below, one hand on the rail. For a moment, Amelia thought he might come back. Then the smoke thickened above them. A security officer shouted for everyone to keep descending. Nolan looked at her one last time. He continued down. Tessa stayed. Amelia tried to push herself upright. Nothing happened. Her left leg lay beneath her like something separate from her body. "Go," she told Tessa. "I am not leaving you. You have 2 children downstairs." Tessa's face changed. Amelia saw the fight inside her. "Fire crews are coming," Amelia said. "Go find them. I can carry you." "No! Amelia, go!" The smoke rolled down another step. Tessa's eyes filled, but she stood. "I am bringing someone back." Amelia did not answer. Tessa disappeared into the red light. Amelia listened to her footsteps fade beneath the alarm. Then she was alone. Several floors below, Luke pushed open the childcare exit with his shoulder. The lock had failed in the closed position. Children and staff crowded behind him while smoke gathered along the ceiling of the corridor. "Stay low," he said. "Hands on the shoulder in front of you." Sophie stood near the back of the group with her backpack pressed to her chest. Luke reached for her. "You stay with Ms. Carter." Her eyes widened. "You are coming too. I need to clear the hall." "No, Sophie, you promised Friday." The word struck him harder than the alarm. Luke crouched in front of her. "I remember, you always say that before work calls." He placed both hands on her shoulders. "Listen to me. Ms. Carter is taking you to the south lobby. I will meet you there." Smoke slipped through the doorway behind him. Sophie looked toward it, then back at her father. "You better." Luke kissed her forehead. I will. Miss Carter took Sophie's hand. Luke watched until the group entered the stairwell. Then he turned back toward the service corridor. His maintenance tablet showed 3 active faults. 2 fire doors had failed. 1 pressure alarm was rising near the executive floors. A security officer appeared at the end of the hall. Mercer, evacuate now. There are people above us. Fire crews are on the way. Which stairwell east? Luke checked the screen. The east stairwell sensor was not responding. He moved toward it. The officer caught his sleeve. You are not authorized above 40. Luke looked at the hand gripping him. Neither is the smoke. He pulled free. The first flight burned his lungs. The second made his right knee ache. By the third, the air was warmer and the alarm sounded farther away, muffled by concrete and distance. He passed a woman sitting on the stairs with one shoe missing. I cannot breathe, she said. Luke knelt in front of her. You can. Look at me. She shook her head wildly. I cannot. Yes, you can. In through your nose. Slow. That is it. He held up 2 fingers. Tell me how many. 2. Again. She drew a breath. 2. A man coming down offered to help her. Luke placed her hand on his arm. Keep her near the wall. Do not stop until the lobby. The man nodded. Luke continued upward. On the 39th floor, he found an elderly guest bent over the rail. Luke recognized him from the donor reception. Sir, can you hear me? The man nodded weakly. Luke loosened his collar and checked his breathing. Small breaths. Do not force them. A security guard appeared below. Luke guided the guest into his arms. Take him down. He may need oxygen. The guard looked toward the smoke above. There is no one else up there. Luke heard a cough, faint, then another. He looked up. The guard grabbed his sleeve. Mercer, the exit is down, then take it. Luke climbed. The higher he went, the quieter the stairwell became. Not safer, just emptier. A memory pressed against the edge of his mind. Night outside Kandahar, a damaged transport, red lights inside a metal cabin, a young soldier calling for his mother while Luke counted breaths and pretended his hands were not shaking. Luke forced the image away. Concrete, smoke, Seattle. He was here. At the 44th floor landing, he saw a broken black heel near the wall. Then he saw Amelia. She sat beneath the handrail with one leg bent awkwardly beneath her. Her hair had come loose. Smoke softened the edges of her blue dress. For the first time since Luke had met her, there was nothing controlled about her. She heard him approach. Do not come closer. Luke stopped several feet away. Can you feel your feet? That is none of your concern. It is if I am taking you downstairs. Her eyes moved to his maintenance shirt. Recognition came slowly. You, me, the elevator, it still needs work. Even then, something almost like a laugh escaped her. It vanished as pain crossed her face. Luke lowered himself beside her, but did not touch her. Which leg? The left. How long has this happened? It passes. When she looked toward the smoke, usually before anyone notices, Luke followed her gaze. Today is not usual. Amelia tried to pull herself upright. Her arm trembled against the rail. The leg did not respond. Panic entered her eyes only after the effort failed. Leave me, she whispered. I cannot walk. Luke removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. The canvas smelled of rain metal and the faint soap Sophie insisted he buy because the other brand smelled like a hospital. Amelia stared at him. Then we are not walking. The alarm flashed red across his face. He held out one hand. I need your permission to move you. She looked at the stairs below. Can you carry me that far? Yes, you do not know that. I know enough. Another cough caught in her chest. Luke moved closer. One arm around my neck. I will slow you down. You already are. Her eyes sharpened. Luke met them calmly. So help me do it safely. She placed one arm around him. Both. I do not know you. You know enough for the next 40 floors. For a second they remained still. Then Amelia placed her other arm around his neck. Luke slid one hand behind her back and the other beneath her knees. On 3, he lifted her on 2. Amelia gasped and tightened her hold. You lied. You were bracing. That does not make lying acceptable. File a complaint when we get outside. He adjusted her weight against his chest. She was lighter than he expected. Not because she weighed little, because she had made herself small. Stop doing that, he said. Doing what trying not to exist. Her face turned away. Luke began walking. At the next landing, Amelia looked over his shoulder. A fire door stood partly open. There is an emergency panel inside. Can it release the lower doors if the executive circuit still has power? Luke carried her through the doorway. The office corridor beyond was dark except for red lights near the floor. He lowered Amelia into a chair. "Stay here." "No." He turned. She pointed toward the panel near the wall. "The code changes every month. I have to enter it." Luke rolled the chair closer. Amelia placed shaking fingers on the keypad. The first code failed. She closed her eyes. "What is today, November 17th? My mother's birthday." She entered 6 numbers. The panel clicked. A green line appeared across the lower stairwell map. Several doors changed from red to white. Voices rose faintly through the walls. Luke looked at her. "You just opened 3 exits." Amelia stared at the screen. "I did not know they were locked." "You know now." He lifted her again. As they entered the stairwell, an announcement crackled through the emergency speaker, broken by static. Amelia looked toward the wall unit. "There is an intercom below." On the 42nd floor, they reached it. Luke lowered her carefully. Amelia pressed the button. "This is Amelia Hartwell." Her voice shook. She stopped. Luke stood beside her. "They do not need perfect," he said. "They need clear." Amelia drew a breath. "This is Amelia Hartwell. The west stairwell is open from floors 38 through 42. Move toward the green exit lights. Do not use the east corridor." The message echoed through the building. She released the button. Luke watched her. "What you sound different when you are not performing." Her eyes narrowed. "You have known me for less than a day. I noticed a lot." He lifted her again. The words stayed between them. On the 40th floor, they found a catering employee frozen beside a utility door. She was young, perhaps 19, with a white apron tied over a black uniform. "I cannot find my sister," she said. "What is her name?" Luke asked. "Marisol." Amelia recognized the name from the event roster. She was assigned to the lower reception level. The girl looked at her. "You know that I approved the staffing list." Amelia pointed toward the west stairs. "She should already be below 35. Go." The girl hesitated. Luke said, "She will be looking for you too." That was enough. She ran. Amelia watched her disappear. "I remembered a name." Luke began descending. "You sound surprised." "I usually remember budgets. Names matter more when the lights go out." Her head rested briefly against his shoulder. Luke felt it, but said nothing. By the 38th floor, his breathing had changed. Amelia noticed the tension in his jaw. "Put me down." "No. You are tired. So are you. My weight is not a negotiation." "Good. Then stop negotiating." A crash sounded above them. Luke froze. The stairwell disappeared for one terrible second. He saw dust inside a military transport. He heard someone crying. His hands tightened around Amelia. "Luke." Her voice was close. He looked down. "You are not here," she said. He drew a breath. "Yes, I am. No, you were somewhere else." The alarm pulsed around them. He forced his fingers to relax. "A long time ago." "Were you a medic?" Luke resumed walking. "I worked around injuries. That is not an answer. It is the one I have." Amelia studied him in silence. Then her left leg spasmed. Pain cut through her so sharply that her fingers dug into his shoulder. Luke stopped. "Where lower back?" "I need to put you down." "No, I am not asking." He lowered her onto a landing and knelt. "Can you feel this?" He pressed gently against the top of her foot. "Yes, and this less." His eyes moved to a pale scar visible near her hip where the fabric of her dress had shifted. Amelia saw him notice. Her body stiffened. Luke immediately pulled the jacket farther over her knees. The gesture was small. It broke something open inside her. 3 years ago, she said, a car crossed the center line outside Tacoma. Luke waited. "My doctors call it incomplete spinal trauma. Some days my body listens. Some days it does not. And what do you call it?" She looked at him. "Something no one can know." "That sounds heavier than the injury." Her throat tightened. "My board has been waiting for a reason to remove me." "Then your board has a problem. My board controls the company." Luke checked the muscles in her calf. "You built the company. My mother built it. I have spent 7 years proving I deserve to keep it." To people who ran past you, the words landed harder than she expected. Amelia looked down the empty stairwell. They were afraid. So were you. That is different. Why? She had no answer. Luke stood. Ready, no. He waited. Amelia looked at him. No one ever waits. I asked if you were ready. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. She nodded. Luke lifted her again. They continued. At the 36th floor, his arms began to shake. Amelia felt it. Put me down. No. There are other people. So do you. She looked at him. He nodded toward the intercom panel in her hand. You helped open the exits. You found the caterer's sister. You are still helping. I am being carried. You are also leading. The distinction silenced her. For years, Amelia had believed leadership meant never leaning on anyone. Luke carried her as though accepting help did not erase authority. At the 35th floor, a woman in a silver evening gown stood pressed against the wall, crying quietly. She stepped aside when she saw them. You came back, she said to Luke. Luke did not respond. Amelia looked at the woman. For him, the woman nodded. He opened the door above us. It was jammed. Luke kept moving. Another employee appeared on the next landing. You helped Mr. Danner. Luke nodded once. He did not slow for the praise. Amelia watched the faces as they passed. People knew him, not because of his title, because of what he had done when no one was watching. The smoke thinned near the 32nd floor. Sirens grew louder beneath them. Amelia could see the lobby through a narrow window in the stairwell door. Reporters crowded near the entrance. Board members stood beneath the chandelier. Cameras were already raised. Set me down. Luke continued walking. Luke, no. I can stand for the lobby. You could not stand 10 minutes ago. I only need a few seconds. Why, she looked through the glass. They cannot see me like this. Luke stopped. The weight of her body rested against his chest. Do you want me to put you down because you are ready? Amelia said nothing. Or because they are watching. Her mouth tightened. You do not understand what this could cost me. Luke's expression softened. Maybe not. He adjusted his jacket around her shoulders. But I know what pretending costs. The lobby doors opened. Flashing lights washed across the marble floor. Luke carried her through. Every face turned. Board members, employees, donors, reporters. People who had applauded Amelia's strength now stared at the body that had failed her. She felt herself shrinking again. Luke spoke quietly near her ear. Look at me. She did. Breathe. He crossed the lobby without lowering his eyes. A paramedic guided him toward a leather bench. Luke placed Amelia down carefully and kept one hand behind her shoulders until she was stable. Do not move the leg yet. She searched his face. Who are you? A smooth voice answered from behind them. That is exactly what we need to determine. Nolan Price stepped through the crowd. His charcoal suit was untouched. His tie remained straight. Gavin stood beside him holding a security tablet. Nolan read Luke's name from his temporary badge. Luke Mercer. Night maintenance. Luke turned. Former badge number 4176, Nolan continued. Used at the East Utility Corridor 11 minutes before the outage. A murmur moved through the lobby. Reporters raised their phones. Gavin held up the tablet. An access record glowed on the screen. Luke's name, Luke's badge, the restricted corridor. Amelia looked at him. Luke's expression changed. Not guilt, recognition. That is not my entry. Nolan tilted his head. Your badge, your shift, your assigned floor. My badge went missing before the launch. Gavin looked down. I reported it at 6:42, Luke said. Service elevator 3. Gavin swallowed. I do not remember that. 2 security officers moved closer. Nolan spread his hands toward the crowd. No one is making accusations. We simply need Mr. Mercer detained until the system can be reviewed. Luke glanced toward the stairwell. There are still people above 30. The fire department will handle them, Nolan said. A west door is still locked. Security. The officers stepped forward. Amelia gripped the edge of the bench. The man who had carried her through 40 floors of smoke stood in the center of the lobby while the people who had abandoned her watched him become the suspect. Then a child's voice cut through the room. Dad Luke turned. Sophie stood near the evacuated childcare group with her backpack pressed against her chest. She saw the officers. She saw the cameras. She saw every adult looking at her father as though they had already decided who he was. Luke's face changed. Not much. Just enough for Amelia to see the fear he had hidden from the fire. "Sophie, stay there." She ran to him. The backpack slipped from her shoulder as she wrapped both arms around his waist. "My dad did not do this." One officer looked away. Nolan bent slightly, wearing a patient smile. "Sometimes good people make bad choices." Sophie looked up at him. "My dad runs toward people." Nolan's smile tightened. "He does not trap them." Luke placed one hand on her shoulder. "Do not speak to my daughter like she is too young to recognize a lie." The lobby fell silent. Amelia looked at Sophie holding her father, at Luke standing accused in worn work boots, and at Nolan using kindness like a costume. She reached for the bench. Pain tore through her hip as she tried to stand. Her left knee collapsed. Luke moved toward her. The officers blocked him. Amelia remained seated. Her breath shook. Her voice did not. "No one removes Luke Mercer from this building." Nolan turned toward her. "You have suffered a medical episode. The board should make that decision." Amelia pulled Luke's jacket tighter around her shoulders. Then she looked directly at the man who had waited years to see her fall. "I am still the chief executive officer." Amelia did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The words crossed the lobby with more force than the alarm still pulsing through the tower. One by one, conversation stopped. Reporters lowered their phones just enough to listen. Board members who had been whispering near the reception desk turned toward her. Amelia remained seated on the leather bench. Her broken heel lay on the marble several feet away. Luke's work jacket covered her evening dress. Her left leg rested exactly where the paramedic had placed it, unable to support her weight. Nolan stood over her in an untouched suit. For years, Amelia had believed power required height control and the appearance of absolute certainty. Now she looked up at him from a bench and watched his confidence falter. "Amelia, Nolan said you have been exposed to smoke. You have suffered a serious neurological event. No reasonable person would expect you to handle an internal investigation tonight." A paramedic adjusted the oxygen monitor beside her. "Ms. Hartwell, we do need to transport you. I understand your blood pressure is elevated. I understand that too." Nolan spread his hands. "Then let medical professionals do their work while security does theirs." Amelia looked at the officers beside Luke. "Security has already decided who looks easiest to blame." One of the officers shifted his weight. Nolan's expression remained patient. "No one has decided anything. You ordered him detained in front of cameras. For everyone's protection." "Whose protection?" The question stayed between them. Luke stood with Sophie pressed against his side. His hands remained visible, his posture calm, but Amelia saw how carefully he kept his body between his daughter and the officers. Nolan glanced toward the board. "This is precisely why established procedure matters. Emotion can distort judgment." Amelia bent down and removed her remaining heel. The motion sent pain across her lower back, but she did not let it reach her face. She placed the shoe beside the broken one. "For 3 years, this company considered me qualified because I could stand behind a podium." She rested both feet flat on the floor, though only one could feel the cold marble beneath it. "Tonight you can decide whether I can lead without one." No one spoke. The nearest reporter slowly lowered her camera. Nolan's eyes narrowed, but his voice stayed smooth. "You are turning a safety investigation into a personal demonstration." "No. You did that when you used my medical condition to question my authority." A quiet murmur moved through the employees. Nolan's gaze flicked toward them. He had expected Amelia to hide. She could see that now. He had expected the sight of her weakness to silence her more effectively than any vote. Instead, she turned toward the security officers. "Step away from Mr. Mercer." The older officer looked at Nolan. Amelia noticed. "Do you report to the chief financial officer?" "No, ma'am." "Then step away." Both officers moved back. Sophie kept her arms around Luke. He lowered one hand to her shoulder. "You are safe," he said. She looked up at him. "Are you?" Luke gave her a small smile. "I am working on it." Near the stairwell entrance, a firefighter emerged with 2 employees. Both were coughing, but they were on their feet. Luke immediately looked past them. Was the west door open? The firefighter removed his mask. "It was when we reached 33. There may be another lockout near 31. We found it. Manual latch was engaged." Luke's jaw tightened. From which side? The service side. Nolan spoke before the firefighter could continue. That can be reviewed later. Luke turned toward him. There were people behind that door, and they are out now. That does not make the door less locked. Amelia watched Nolan's face. He did not look surprised, only irritated that the detail had been said aloud. The elderly donor Luke had helped earlier sat near the reception desk with an oxygen mask over his mouth. He lifted one shaking hand. That man saved me. Several people looked toward him. A paramedic tried to keep him seated, but he pulled the mask down. He found me on the stairs. I could not breathe. Nolan gave him a sympathetic nod. Mr. Danner, you have had a difficult evening. Please conserve your strength. I know what happened to me. The old man pointed at Luke. He gave the guard instructions. He knew exactly what to do. A woman in a silver gown stepped away from the crowd. He opened the door on 35. Her makeup was streaked beneath her eyes. It would not move. Everyone was pushing, but it was locked. He told us to step back, then he forced it open. Another employee raised her hand. He carried a child's medical bag. A catering worker spoke from near the elevators. He found my sister. The voices came slowly at first. Then more followed. Luke had guided them. Luke had checked the rooms. Luke had sent them toward the open exits. Luke had returned upstairs when everyone else was moving down. Nolan waited until the voices began overlapping. Acts of assistance do not erase access records. The room quieted again. He turned toward Gavin. Show them. Gavin stood near the reception desk, holding the tablet with both hands. His face had lost color. He tapped the screen and sent the access report to the large lobby display. A white page appeared beneath the Harbor Rise logo. Badge number 4176, Luke Mercer, East Utility Corridor, 6:58 p.m. The timestamp glowed in black letters. Nolan faced the crowd. Mr. Mercer's badge entered a restricted systems corridor shortly before the outage. That is not an opinion. It is a record. Luke looked at Gavin. I reported the badge missing at 6:42. Gavin cleared his throat. I do not remember receiving that report. Service Elevator 3. I speak with dozens of employees during an event. You gave me temporary badge 8821. Gavin's eyes moved toward Nolan. Luke saw it. So did Amelia. Nolan stepped between them. A temporary badge does not prove the original was stolen. No, Luke said, but a deactivation request would. Gavin tightened his grip on the tablet. There was no deactivation request. Luke studied him. I entered one in the maintenance log. Then perhaps you entered it after the outage. Sophie's fingers curled around the fabric of her father's shirt. Luke looked down at her, then back at Gavin. My daughter was in this building. No one moved. You think I would leave an active badge inside a tower where she was waiting for me? Gavin opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Behind the reception desk, Maya Brooks stood beside a portable computer station. Her damp hair clung to the shoulders of her sweater. She had been brought up from the lower systems floor after the cameras failed. Amelia noticed the way Maya kept looking at the access report. Ms. Brooks. Maya looked up. Did the maintenance server record Mr. Mercer's report? Nolan answered for her. The main system went offline. Amelia did not look at him. I asked Ms. Brooks. Maya's hands hovered above the keyboard. The maintenance logs use a separate server. Then check it. Maya sat down. Gavin moved closer. We already checked the relevant systems. Maya glanced at him. You checked the security archive. That is the relevant system for badge access. Her voice was quiet but clear. Not for maintenance reports. Nolan looked at her. Ms. Brooks, do not speculate in front of the press. Maya's fingers stopped moving. Amelia saw fear travel across the young woman's face. Not fear of being mistaken. Fear of being correct in a room where the wrong person controlled her job. Continue, Amelia said. Nolan gave a short laugh. Amelia, this employee is not authorized to conduct a forensic review. Is she qualified? That is not the issue. Amelia looked at Maya. Are you qualified? Maya swallowed. Yes. Then continue. The keys clicked beneath her fingers. The lobby screen changed. Lines of internal data appeared. Maya searched the maintenance archive, then opened a record labeled Access Loss Report. Luke Mercer, 6:43 p.m., missing badge 4176, temporary badge issued. A soft sound moved through the crowd. Maya leaned closer to the screen. "There is more." Gavin stepped beside her. "What?" "The report was flagged for deletion at 7:03. Nolan's face remained still. By whom Maya opened the activity history, the authorization field was blank. She frowned. That should not be possible. Gavin spoke quickly. The outage corrupted the audit record. "Maybe." Maya enlarged the time sequence. "But the deletion request was made before the main system failed." Gavin stared at the screen. Nolan turned toward the board. "This is exactly why incomplete data should not be interpreted publicly." Amelia watched him carefully. He was no longer trying to prove Luke guilty. He was trying to stop the room from looking deeper. "Can you recover the deleted authorization?" she asked. Maya hesitated. "Possibly, but it would take time." "Then start." A paramedic touched Amelia's arm. "We cannot delay transport much longer." Amelia looked at Luke. He stood with smoke marks across his face, one hand resting on Sophie's shoulder. He had carried her through a failing building. Now, every minute she remained in the lobby increased the danger to her own health. Luke understood the cost before she spoke. "Go to the hospital," he said. Nolan glanced toward him, surprised. Luke continued, "You do not need to stay here for me." Amelia looked down at the jacket around her shoulders. "You stayed." That was different. Why, there was smoke. She almost smiled. There is still smoke. Their eyes held for a moment. Something passed between them that no one else in the lobby could name. Then Maya straightened. The cameras on the executive floors failed at 7:09. Nolan turned. "We know that. The thermal system did not." The room shifted. Maya looked toward Amelia. "The emergency occupancy sensors operate on independent batteries. They do not record faces, but they record body heat movement and timestamps." Gavin took a step back. Nolan noticed. "So we have shadows," he said. "That proves very little. It can prove location," Maya replied. Amelia leaned forward. "Show us Mr. Mercer." Maya entered Luke's employee identification into the evacuation tracking system. A grainy image appeared on the lobby screen. White human shapes moved against a gray background. The first timestamp read 6:59. Luke's figure stood outside the childcare corridor, forcing a door open with his shoulder. At 7:01, he guided a group of children toward the west stairwell. At 7:04, he knelt beside an elderly man. At 7:06, he entered the upper stairwell. At 7:08, he appeared on the 44th floor beside Amelia. The evidence moved in silence. Luke was visible in one evacuation zone after another, not hiding, not tampering with controls, counting people, opening doors, moving toward danger. Sophie looked up at the screen, then at the adults who had doubted him. Her face did not show triumph, only disappointment. Nolan folded his arms. "The thermal data does not identify him with certainty." Maya looked at Luke. "May I compare the temporary badge?" Luke nodded. She entered number 8821. The same figure appeared in the same locations. The system had tracked the active badge clipped to Luke's chest. Maya turned toward Nolan. "That is Mr. Mercer." Nolan's mouth tightened. "Then someone else used his original badge." Luke looked at Gavin. "That is what I have been saying." Nolan ignored him. "The issue now is identifying that person. There is no reason to continue involving Mr. Mercer." Amelia heard the retreat hidden inside the sentence. Nolan was ready to sacrifice Gavin if it kept the investigation from reaching him. "Show the East Utility Corridor," she said. Maya's fingers paused. "The image quality may be poor." "Show it." Nolan stepped closer to Amelia. "You need medical treatment. I needed medical treatment when you watched me enter the stairwell." His eyes hardened. "That is unfair. Is it inaccurate?" He did not answer. Maya opened the thermal file. A narrow corridor appeared on the display. At 6:58, a white figure entered from the service elevator. The person was broader than Luke. The shoulders were heavier. The walk was uneven in a different way, a slight outward turn of the right foot. The figure held Luke's badge to the panel. Gavin's breathing became audible. Nolan looked at him. "Stay calm." The instruction was too quiet for most of the room. Amelia heard it. Luke did too. Maya advanced the recording. The figure entered the control room. Seconds later, warning indicators appeared across the floor map. The figure returned to the hall and moved toward the fire door override. Maya zoomed in. The thermal image blurred. "We cannot identify a face," Nolan said. Maya examined the file list. There is a secondary door sensor. Gavin shook his head. No. Everyone looked at him. He tried to recover. That sensor was disconnected last month. Maya opened its archive. It was scheduled for replacement. It was not disconnected. A still image appeared. The sensor had captured only a fraction of the corridor. Most of the figure remained outside the frame, but the steel panel reflected the person standing beside it. The face was distorted by the curved metal. It was still recognizable. Gavin Ross stared back from the screen. The tablet slipped from his hands. It struck the marble and cracked. Security moved toward him. Gavin backed into the reception desk. I did not start a fire. No one had accused him yet. Nolan's voice sharpened. Do not say anything else. Gavin looked at him. The fear in his face became something larger. You said it was safe. Nolan stood perfectly still. Amelia felt every person in the lobby turn toward him. Gavin continued before anyone could stop him. You said the elevator would stop for 3 minutes. You said the private stair lights would fail and she would have to walk. Nolan's jaw tightened. You are confused. No. Gavin shook his head. You said the board needed to see her fall. Amelia did not move. Her fingers tightened around Luke's jacket. Gavin looked at her. His eyes filled with tears. He knew about your leg. A reporter lifted her phone. Nolan pointed at Gavin. This man is in shock. Anything he says should be treated accordingly. Gavin laughed once a broken sound. You gave me the badge. Nolan stepped toward him. Be careful. You said one video would be enough. You said they would remove her before the acquisition vote. Amelia watched Nolan. He did not deny knowing about the injury. He did not look surprised by the plan. He looked furious that Gavin had said it in public. Gavin wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. I entered the override. The system was only supposed to shut down the elevator and the lights. Luke's voice was quiet. You locked the fire doors. I did not know the sequence would do that. There were children in this building. I know. My daughter was in this building. I know. Luke took one step forward. Security tensed. Sophie held his hand. He stopped. Gavin looked at him as though an apology might save him. I made a mistake. Luke's face remained calm. A mistake is pressing the wrong number. He looked toward the stairwell. You used my badge, locked people behind doors, and hoped someone with less money would carry the blame. Gavin lowered his head. Nolan turned toward Amelia. This is an operations failure. Gavin acted without authorization. Maya looked at him. Then why did he have Mr. Mercer's badge? Nolan faced her. That is for investigators to determine. Amelia said they will. Nolan's gaze returned to her. You should be careful about making accusations before legal counsel arrives. I have not accused you. She looked toward the reporters. Mr. Ross has. For the first time that night. Nolan lost control of his expression. Only for a second. It was enough. Maya returned to the files. There is another backup. Amelia looked at her. What kind? The stairwell intercom stores emergency audio locally. Luke's eyes shifted toward the wall. Maya selected the 44th floor recording. Static filled the lobby. Then came the alarm. A cough. The scrape of a shoe against concrete. Amelia heard her own breathing. Weak, uneven, exposed. Every instinct told her to stop the recording. She did not. Her voice came through the speakers. Leave me. I cannot walk. No one looked away. Footsteps approached through the static. Luke's voice followed. Then we are not walking. The lobby became completely still. Amelia looked at Luke. He was not watching the screen. He was watching her. There was no pity in his face, no pride, only the same steady attention he had given her in the smoke. She no longer felt humiliated by the recording. She felt seen. Nolan broke the silence. This has become a spectacle. Amelia turned toward him. No. It became evidence. She looked at security. Preserve every file, every access record, every communication connected to Mr. Ross and Mr. Price. Nolan's eyes went cold. You are allowing gratitude to interfere with governance. I am allowing facts to interfere with your plan. He leaned closer. His voice dropped. If the board receives your full medical history, you will lose your position before sunrise. Amelia felt the old fear rise inside her. Then Luke stepped nearer, not in front of her, beside her. Nolan looked at him with open contempt. "You have no place in this conversation." Before Luke could answer, an older man moved out from beside the paramedics. Dr. Henry Lawson had spent the evening watching in silence. His white hair was disordered and ash marked one sleeve of his coat. He studied Luke's face. Then the name printed on his temporary badge. "Mr. Mercer," he said slowly. "What is your full name?" Luke's shoulders tightened. "Lucas Andrew Mercer." Dr. Lawson took one step closer. His expression changed with recognition. "Captain Mercer." The title seemed to change the air around Luke. Sophie looked up at him. Amelia watched the calm leave his face, not in panic but in the quiet retreat of a man hearing a door open that he had kept locked for years. Luke's hand tightened around his daughter's. That was a long time ago. Dr. Henry Lawson stopped a few feet away. I knew I recognized the name. Nolan gave a short, humorless laugh, recognized him from where Dr. Lawson did not look at Nolan, from the original Harbor Rise research archive. The reporters turned toward Luke again. He glanced at the cameras, then at Sophie. Henry Amelia said, "What are you talking about?" Dr. Lawson moved to the computer station beside Maya. 12 years ago, your mother partnered with military rehabilitation units in Afghanistan and Germany. We were studying spinal stabilization during emergency transport." Amelia remembered the early photographs in her mother's office. Portable laboratories, military hospitals, doctors standing beside machines that looked crude compared with the Astra frame unveiled that evening. "My mother worked with dozens of units." "Yes." Dr. Lawson looked at Luke. "But one set of field reports changed how we approached incomplete spinal trauma." Luke lowered his eyes. "Those were observations, nothing more. They were more than that." Dr. Lawson turned to Maya. "Search the Legacy Medical Archive. Mercer, Lucas Andrew." Maya entered the name. The system loaded slowly. Nolan stepped forward. "This has nothing to do with the sabotage. It has everything to do with the man you were willing to condemn," Amelia said. Nolan looked at her. "A military record does not make him innocent. The evidence already did that." Maya opened a folder dated 12 years earlier. Scanned pages filled the lobby screen. Handwritten diagrams, patient notes, transport records, photographs taken inside canvas medical tents. Then a younger Luke appeared on the screen. His hair was shorter, his face was thinner. He knelt beside a portable support frame while another medic adjusted a patient's legs. Sophie stared at the image. "That is you." Luke did not answer. Maya enlarged the document title. Field Mobility Stabilization Protocol, submitted by Captain Lucas Andrew Mercer. Amelia looked from the screen to Luke. "The Mercer Protocol." Dr. Lawson nodded. "One of several research sources that shaped our first neurological support frame." Luke's voice was quiet. "It was not mine. You wrote it, my team built it, you documented it because people were getting hurt during transport." Dr. Lawson stepped closer. "You identified that patients with partial motor response were losing function when they were secured according to standard trauma procedure. You changed the support angle and reduced pressure on the lower spine." Luke stared at the photograph as though it belonged to someone else. "We were improvising. That improvisation became evidence." Nolan crossed his arms. "Field notes are not intellectual ownership." Luke looked at him. "I never asked for ownership." Dr. Lawson's expression hardened. "No. He asked for the opposite." Maya opened another file. A letter appeared beneath the Harbor Rise logo. Luke's signature was visible at the bottom. Dr. Lawson read aloud. He requested that any civilian application remain accessible to injured service members and patients without adequate insurance. Sophie looked up at her father. "You helped make the machines." Luke crouched in front of her. "No, sweetheart. A lot of people made them, but you helped." He hesitated. "I wrote down something that worked. Why did you never tell me?" The question came without anger. That made it harder. Luke brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Because it was part of a life I did not know how to bring home." Sophie looked at the screen again. In the photograph, Luke was pressing both hands against the support frame while a wounded soldier watched him with fear in his eyes. "You saved him?" Luke followed her gaze. His face changed. That man lived. Sophie heard what he did not say. Did everyone? Luke looked down. No. The lobby remained silent. For the first time, even the reporters seemed unwilling to interrupt. Amelia studied Luke's hands. They were the same hands that had checked the feeling in her foot, covered her scar, and carried her through the stairwell. She had assumed his steadiness came from confidence. Now she saw something else beneath it. Memory. Luke stood. This does not belong on a screen. Maya immediately closed the photograph. Dr. Lawson nodded. You are right. He looked toward Amelia. Your mother tried to locate him after the company received its first major investment. The military contact information was no longer current. Luke gave a tired smile. I had other things happening. Amelia heard the finality in his voice. She did not ask in front of the room. Nolan adjusted his cuffs. An admirable history does not change the operational facts. Amelia turned toward him. What operational facts remain unclear? That Gavin acted alone. Gavin stood between two security officers near the reception desk. His face lifted. That is not true. Nolan did not look at him. You are frightened and confused. You gave me the badge. You stole an employee credential and created a dangerous system failure. Gavin shook his head. You said it would force an emergency vote. Nolan's voice sharpened. I said no such thing. Maya looked toward the computer. Mr. Price, do you authorize building operations through your executive account? Nolan faced her. You should speak with legal counsel before asking questions that exceed your position. Maya's fear returned. Amelia saw it. Answer her. Nolan looked at Amelia. You cannot order me to disclose privileged communication in a lobby. I can order the preservation of company records. That has already been done. Then you should have no objection. Nolan's expression remained smooth, but a pulse moved in his temple. Maya turned to her keyboard. The deletion request on Luke's badge report came through an administrative proxy. It erased the user field, but it may have preserved the routing address. Nolan looked toward the board. This is not a forensic environment, Dr. Lawson answered. No, it is a lobby full of people who nearly died. Maya opened the server history. Rows of numbers appeared. She traced the deletion request through two internal systems, then stopped. The route ended at an executive finance terminal. A board member leaned closer to the screen. Whose terminal? Maya did not answer immediately. Amelia did. Nolan's. Nolan's face stayed still. Anyone with administrative access could route through my office. Maya checked another record. The login required biometric confirmation. A different silence settled over the room. Nolan looked at Gavin. The message in his eyes was unmistakable. Take the blame. Gavin turned away. Maya continued searching. There are encrypted messages between the finance terminal and Mr. Ross's operations account. Encrypted communication is standard, Nolan said, not through a temporary archive. Maya opened the first recovered message. The text appeared on the screen. Confirm Mercer badge acquired. The next message followed. Private elevator interruption at 7:09. Stair lighting delay at 7:11. Hartwell must use executive stairs. Amelia read the words twice. A third message appeared. Capture visible motor failure. Board vote before markets open. No one looked at Amelia's leg. That was somehow worse. The entire plan had reduced her body to a scheduled event. Nolan stepped toward the computer. This material is incomplete and taken out of context. Maya moved between him and the keyboard. He stopped. Luke watched Nolan carefully. What context makes that better? Nolan looked at him with open contempt. You have no understanding of what is required to protect a company of this size. Luke's voice remained level. You risked a building full of people to protect your promotion. I protected the shareholders from an impaired executive who concealed a material condition. Amelia felt the words strike the room. Nolan realized too late that he had said too much. A reporter spoke from behind the cameras. Did you know about Ms. Hartwell's injury before tonight? Nolan turned toward her. I am not answering questions. Another reporter raised his voice. How did you obtain her medical information? Amelia looked at Maya. Continue. Maya opened a folder attached to Nolan's account. Inside were copies of Amelia's therapy schedule, insurance authorization forms, and private notes from a neurological clinic. Tessa covered her mouth. Amelia stared at the records. The dates reached back almost a year. Every appointment she had hidden. Every treatment she had rescheduled. Every morning she had walked into the tower believing no one knew. Nolan had been watching. You accessed my medical files. Nolan lowered his voice. I reviewed information relevant to executive continuity. You stole them. I acted in the company's interest. Amelia looked toward the Astra frame visible through the open ballroom doors. Its white supports gleamed beneath emergency lighting. A machine designed to restore dignity had been introduced by a company whose leaders treated her diagnosis as a weapon. What did you plan to do after the vote? Nolan said nothing. Maya opened another message. Divest community clinics within 90 days. Transfer Astra patent portfolio to North Coast Medical. Terminate subsidized access commitments. Dr. Lawson stared at the screen. You were going to sell the rehabilitation division. Nolan's expression hardened. I was going to save the company. By closing the clinics, Amelia asked. By removing sentimental obligations that weaken valuation. Luke looked at him. Those obligations are people. Nolan gave him a cold smile. That is a convenient belief when you have never been responsible for payroll. Luke took one step forward. I have been responsible for men who did not make it home. The smile disappeared from Nolan's face. And I have been responsible for a little girl who needed dinner whether I could afford it or not. Sophie reached for Luke's hand. He took it. Do not explain responsibility to me. Police officers entered through the main doors with members of the fire department's investigation unit. The lobby shifted again. Nolan looked toward Amelia. You need to consider what happens if I am removed tonight. Investors will panic. The board will fracture. The federal contract may disappear. Amelia listened to the same fear that had controlled her for 3 years. The company could collapse. The board could remove her. The press could turn her disability into the only fact anyone remembered. She had built every decision around preventing those possibilities. Now people had nearly died inside her building. She looked at the employees gathered along the walls. Some were still wrapped in emergency blankets. Others had ash on their faces. The catering worker held her sister's hand. Then Amelia looked at Luke. He did not nod or offer reassurance. He let the decision remain hers. Security, Amelia said. The officers near Nolan straightened. Remove Mr. Price's building access. Preserve his phone and company devices. He is suspended from all duties effective immediately. Nolan's face went pale. You do not have the votes. I do not need a board vote to suspend an executive under active investigation for a safety incident. You are making a catastrophic mistake. Amelia looked at the messages on the screen. No, I am finally looking directly at one. A police investigator approached Nolan. We need you to come with us. Nolan glanced toward the board members. No one moved to help him. His attention returned to Amelia. This company will not survive your weakness. Amelia held his gaze. My condition did not lock those doors. Nolan said nothing. Your ambition did. The investigator guided him away. Gavin followed with another officer. He was crying quietly now, his shoulders bent beneath the consequences he had imagined another man would carry. When the doors closed behind them, the lobby did not erupt in applause. People simply breathed. The paramedic beside Amelia knelt. We are leaving now. Amelia nodded. Yes. Tessa brought a wheelchair from the medical team. Amelia looked at it. 6 hours earlier, she would have refused. Now she placed one hand on the armrest. Luke stepped closer. Do you want help? The question mattered, not because she needed assistance, because he asked. Yes, he supported her back while the paramedic guided her into the chair. Luke did not lift her until she disappeared inside his strength. He allowed her to control each movement. Once she was seated, Amelia looked toward the employees. There was still something she needed to say, before I leave. The lobby quieted. Amelia rested both hands in her lap. I have incomplete spinal nerve damage from an accident 3 years ago. Her voice caught on the public admission. She continued. Some days I walk without difficulty. Some days I need a cane. Some days I cannot stand. No one interrupted. I hid that because I believed this board would confuse disability with incompetence. She looked toward the executive group. Nolan exploited that fear, but he did not create all of it. Several faces lowered. I helped create a company where people were afraid to report risks. I allowed tonight's launch to continue even after safety reviews were delayed. I accepted a culture where the people maintaining this building were noticed only when something broke. Her eyes found Luke. That failure belongs to me. Luke's expression did not soften. Amelia was grateful for that. She did not want forgiveness before accountability. A board member stepped forward. "Amelia, this is not the time. It is exactly the time." She looked toward Maya. Ms. Brooks was afraid to reveal evidence in front of company leadership. That should never happen here. Maya blinked back tears. Amelia turned to the gathered employees. "There will be an independent investigation. Every safety report, executive communication, and access decision will be reviewed. No employee will face retaliation for cooperating." The fire alarm finally stopped. The silence afterward felt enormous. The paramedics began moving Amelia toward the ambulance entrance. Luke walked beside the chair. Sophie followed close to him. Outside rain struck the pavement beneath the emergency lights. The air smelled clean after the smoke. Tessa took Sophie inside to find her backpack, leaving Luke and Amelia beneath the metal awning. For a moment they were alone. Amelia looked at his profile. The red lights moved across his face, revealing exhaustion she had not seen in the stairwell. Captain Mercer. Luke's jaw tightened. "Please do not call me that." "Why?" "Because he stayed overseas." Amelia waited. Rain ran from the edge of the awning in silver lines. Luke looked toward the ambulance. "My last deployment ended with a transport attack. We had 5 patients and room for 3. Amelia said nothing. I chose the 3 I thought had the best chance." His voice stayed steady, but his hands did not. "2 died before the second vehicle reached us. You made the decision you had to make. That is what every report said, but you did not believe it." Luke looked at her. "No." He leaned against the metal support post. "When I came home, Rachel was already sick. At first we thought it was treatable. Then we spent 2 years moving between specialist insurance calls and hospital rooms." Amelia remembered the photograph beside the kitchen sink that Sophie had mentioned earlier while talking to a child care worker. A mother whose absence shaped every silence between Luke and his daughter. "After she died, I tried returning to emergency medicine," Luke said. "The first alarm went off, and I could not move." Amelia saw him again in the stairwell when the crash above them had pulled him somewhere else. Maintenance had night hours, health insurance, enough flexibility to take Sophie to school. "You never told Harbor Rise about the research. I did not want to become a story people used at fundraisers." Amelia looked down at the jacket still covering her shoulders. "I walked past you, yes." The answer was immediate. She looked at him. "Luke did not rescue her from the truth. I probably gave you repair orders without knowing your name. You did. I am sorry." He looked through the glass doors at employees still gathered inside. "Start with them." Amelia nodded. "I will." Tessa returned carrying Sophie's backpack and Amelia's handbag. A black folding cane was visible inside. Luke reached into the bag and removed it. Amelia stared at him. "You saw that?" "When I checked for medication. You could have told them. It was not mine to tell." He placed the cane across her lap. Amelia ran her fingers over the handle. "My whole life changes when I leave this building." Luke looked toward the reporters waiting beyond the police line. "It was changing whether you told the truth or not." She smiled faintly. "You are not very comforting. I carried you 40 floors, 30-something. Now you are correcting me. It was a difficult evening. Accuracy matters." A tired laugh escaped him. The sound warmed her more than the jacket. Sophie approached and looked between them. "Are you going to the hospital?" Amelia nodded. "Your father is very insistent. He is bossy when people are hurt." "I noticed." Sophie looked at the cane. "My mom had one for a while." Luke's face shifted. Sophie continued. She hated when people grabbed her without asking. Amelia looked at Luke. "He always asks." Sophie nodded as if confirming an important qualification. "That means he likes you." "Sophie, what you do." Luke closed his eyes. Amelia laughed. It hurt her ribs. She did not stop. The paramedic opened the ambulance door. Luke stepped back. Amelia looked at him. "Why did you return to the stairwell?" "Someone was still there." "That is all at first." The rain softened, and after that Luke's eyes held hers. "After that I started getting to know her." Amelia felt the answer settle somewhere deeper than gratitude. Luke lifted one hand toward her face, then stopped. He waited. Amelia leaned into his palm. His skin was warm and rough against her cheek. Neither of them spoke. Sophie's voice came from a few feet away. "Dad, you are doing the staring thing." Luke lowered his hand. Amelia smiled at him as the paramedics moved her into the ambulance. The doors began to close. Luke stood in the rain with Sophie beside him, one hand resting on her shoulder. Amelia held his jacket around herself and watched them through the narrowing space until the doors met. The ambulance doors closed between them. Amelia watched Luke and Sophie through the small rear window as the vehicle pulled away from Harbor Rise Tower. Red emergency lights stretched across the wet pavement, then broke apart in the rain. Luke stood beneath the awning with one arm around his daughter. He did not wave. Neither did Amelia. Some moments were too fragile for gestures. She held his jacket against her chest until the tower disappeared behind the dark buildings of downtown Seattle. At the hospital, doctors examined her spine-tested nerve response and ordered scans that lasted until nearly dawn. The damage had not worsened, but inflammation had caused a severe episode. She would need rest, physical therapy, and time. Amelia listened from a hospital bed while rain tapped against the window. Time had always sounded like an accusation to her. She measured it in earnings calls, product deadlines, board votes, and market openings. Time was something to control before it exposed hesitation. That morning it arrived as a quiet room and a leg that would not move when she commanded it. Tessa sat in the chair near the window with a cup of untouched coffee. "The press is outside," she said. Amelia stared at the ceiling. "How many enough?" "And the board emergency meeting at 9. Amelia turned her head. "Without me, they asked whether you were medically able to attend." A familiar fear moved through her. For 3 years, that question had been enough to make her stand through pain-cancel treatment and smile when she wanted to scream. She looked down at the folding cane resting beside the bed. Luke had placed it across her lap before the ambulance doors closed. He had seen it and kept the secret until she chose to speak. Amelia reached for her phone. "Put me on the meeting." Tessa hesitated. "You have not slept. Neither have they. That is not a reason." Amelia looked at her. "No, it is not." She lowered the phone again. The old answer would have been to appear immediately bruised and exhausted and prove she could still dominate the room. Instead, she settled back against the pillow. "Tell them the meeting begins at 11. Tessa blinked. "And if they refuse, then they can explain to every employee why they held a leadership vote while the chief executive officer was under medical observation after an incident caused by the chief financial officer." A slow smile appeared on Tessa's face. "There you are." Amelia looked toward the rain. "No." Her voice was quiet. "I think I am still figuring out who that is." At 11, Amelia joined the meeting from the hospital. She did not hide the medical equipment behind her. She did not angle the camera to remove the cane from view. 7 board members appeared on the screen. Nolan's chair was empty. The police had not formally charged him yet, but investigators had taken his devices. Gavin was cooperating. The fire department had classified the system failure as intentional interference. The board chair cleared his throat. "Amelia, first we are relieved that you are safe." She waited. He continued. "Given the circumstances, we need to discuss temporary leadership because I am in a hospital bed because the company is in crisis. The company was in crisis before I entered the hospital." A director looked down at her notes. "There are serious questions about what you knew regarding your medical condition." Amelia almost laughed. "My medical condition was not responsible for the outage. No one is suggesting that. You are discussing my body before discussing the executives who locked employees behind fire doors." The board chair leaned toward his camera. "We must consider investor confidence." Amelia looked at each face on the screen. "Then let us give investors something worth being confident in." She placed a document on the tray across her bed. "Effective immediately, I am requesting an independent investigation into the safety failures, the acquisition discussions, the handling of my private medical information, and the deletion of employee reports." Several directors began speaking at once. Amelia raised one hand. "I am also requesting the suspension of every pending acquisition vote until that investigation is complete. You cannot freeze a board process unilaterally. I can when the process may have been manipulated through criminal conduct." Silence returned. Amelia continued. There will also be an external review of our accessibility policies, employee reporting systems, and emergency procedures. A director frowned. That could take months? Yes. And cost millions? Yes. You are proposing all of this during the most unstable week in the company's history. Amelia looked toward the cane. No. She looked back at the screen. I am proposing it during the first honest week in the company's history. No one challenged her again. Luke did not visit the hospital that day. He sent a message through Tessa asking whether Amelia had received his jacket. She had. He asked for it back only because his apartment keys were in the inside pocket. Amelia found them near the torn lining. She held the keys in her hand longer than necessary before giving them to Tessa. Sophie visited 2 days later. She entered the hospital room carrying a paper bag from the bakery beneath Luke's apartment. Luke followed several steps behind her. He wore a clean blue shirt instead of his maintenance uniform. Without the badge and work jacket, he looked unfamiliar for only a second. Then Amelia saw the tiredness around his eyes. That was still Luke. Sophie placed the bag on the bed. Cinnamon rolls. Amelia looked inside. There are 4. 1 is for your assistant. Tessa, sitting near the window, smiled. I like her. Sophie pulled a folded piece of paper from her backpack. And this is for you. It was a drawing of Harbor Rise Tower beneath dark clouds. On one side, a woman sat in a chair wearing a blue dress. On the other, a man held open a door. Between them, Sophie had drawn a large red heart. Luke saw it. Sophie, it is not romantic. Amelia lifted one eyebrow. What is it, emergency design? Luke looked toward the ceiling. Amelia tried not to smile. The effort failed. Sophie climbed onto the chair beside the bed. Can you move your leg now a little? Does it hurt? Yes. My mom used to say pain got louder when adults tried to pretend it was not there. Luke's face changed. Amelia looked at him. Rachel said that usually when I was telling her I was fine. Sophie opened the cinnamon roll bag. Dad says fine when he means terrible. Luke sat near the foot of the bed. I am beginning to regret bringing you. You did not bring me. I brought you. Amelia looked between them. The warmth in their arguments filled the room in a way flowers and cards had not. Sophie ate half a cinnamon roll, left icing on the hospital blanket, and spent 20 minutes explaining why the clinic should have therapy dogs. When Tessa offered to take her to the cafeteria, Sophie agreed only after making Luke promise not to leave without her. The door closed behind them. The room became quieter. Luke looked at Amelia's leg beneath the blanket. What did the doctor say? No new injury. That is good. They want me to use a wheelchair for several weeks. Luke nodded. Amelia waited for pity. It did not come. They also want me to return to physical therapy. You should. You are very comfortable giving orders in hospitals. I spent enough time in them. The words created a silence. Amelia looked toward the window. I read the old research report. Luke's shoulders tightened. You did not have to. I wanted to. It was a field memo. It changed the way my mother's team thought about transport injuries. It was one part of the research. You still mattered. Luke looked down at his hands. I know. The answer surprised her. He continued. I just do not want the worst years of my life turned into the most interesting thing about me. Amelia understood. Her injury had become the most dangerous fact in every room. His past had become the most impressive. Both could erase the person living around them. I asked communications not to use your military history, she said. Luke looked up. They wanted to. They want a hero story. And you do not. Amelia thought of the headlines outside. Maintenance worker saves disabled CEO. Hidden military hero behind Harbor Rise technology. Each version turned them into symbols. I want the truth. That is harder to sell. I am discovering that. Luke stood and walked towards the window. Seattle spread below them in wet silver streets. The company offered me paid leave. You were nearly framed for sabotage. They also offered me a promotion. Amelia had not authorized that. What kind, facilities supervisor? She could hear the answer in his voice. You do not want it. I do not want them deciding I deserve respect only after they found an old military photograph. Amelia looked down. That is fair. Luke turned. I did not say it to punish you. I know. I am not ashamed of the work. You should not be. I fix things people depend on. Boilers, locks, elevators, doors that should open when someone is afraid. Amelia met his eyes. I know what that at work is worth now? Luke studied her. Now the word hurt because it was true. Amelia did not defend herself. Now. Luke returned to the chair. He sat close enough that his knee nearly touched the bed. What happens to the company? The investigation continues. Nolan's accounts are frozen. Gavin is cooperating with police, and the clinics, the sale is suspended. For how long? Permanently, if I can keep the board from removing me. Luke leaned back. Can they? Yes. Are you afraid? Amelia looked at him. Yes. The confession came easier than she expected. Luke nodded. Good. She frowned. That is not the answer people usually give. Fear means you understand what it costs, and if they remove me, then you decide who you are without the title. Amelia looked toward the hospital door where Sophie had disappeared. Luke had lost a military career, a medical career, and his wife. He had not stopped being a father. What did you decide? She asked. After Rachel, yes. Luke was quiet for a long time. I decided Sophie still needed breakfast. Amelia felt the simplicity of the answer settle over her. No speech, no promise, only the next necessary act. He reached for the paper bag and handed her a cinnamon roll. Eat. She accepted it. That sounded like an order. It was. Captain Mercer returns. Do not call me that. She smiled. He almost did too. The board did not remove Amelia. The public investigation made a quiet leadership transition impossible. 3 directors resigned after emails revealed they had known Nolan was collecting information about Amelia's health. A 4th admitted supporting the acquisition without reviewing the impact on subsidized clinics. Nolan was charged with conspiracy, reckless endangerment, unlawful access to private medical information, and evidence tampering. His attorneys denied several allegations, and the legal process continued beyond the first months. Gavin accepted responsibility for his role and agreed to cooperate. His testimony gave investigators access to months of private communications. Amelia attended every board meeting during her recovery. Sometimes she appeared in a wheelchair. Sometimes she used the folding cane. Once during a press conference, her leg began to spasm. She stopped speaking. The room waited. In the past, she would have gripped the podium until the pain passed and continued as though nothing had happened. This time she sat down. A reporter asked whether her condition affected her ability to lead. Amelia adjusted the microphone. It affects the way I move. She looked directly into the cameras. It does not make decisions for me. The clip traveled across national news before the meeting ended. For several weeks, Luke avoided the cameras outside Harbor Eyes. He returned to work only after Amelia agreed that no reporter would be allowed onto the maintenance floors. His first night back, he found a new brass nameplate on the maintenance office door. Lucas Mercer, Director of Emergency Readiness. He stared at it. Then he removed it with a screwdriver. The next morning, Amelia found the plate on her desk with a note. Too much brass. She laughed for the first time that day. They argued about the position for 3 weeks. Amelia wanted Luke to lead emergency training and advise the medical design teams. Luke insisted he did not have a corporate degree. Amelia replied that Gavin had several. Luke said that was not encouraging. They eventually agreed on a role that allowed him to remain connected to maintenance operations while training staff in emergency response and field use of mobility equipment. He refused an executive office. Instead, he chose a room beside the workshop with a scarred wooden desk and 2 windows facing the lake. Sophie added a sign to the door. Quality control approved. The company changed slowly. Emergency doors were tested weekly. Anonymous safety reports went to an outside review board. Hourly employees joined the building safety committee. Accessibility audits covered employee spaces, not only public areas. The executive dining floor closed. In its place, construction began on a rehabilitation center for veterans' uninsured patients and children with neurological movement disorders. Amelia funded the first year personally. She did not announce it at a gala. She told Luke in the workshop while he was repairing a training brace. We need a name. He did not look up. Open Harbor. That was fast. Sophie named it last week. Amelia smiled. Of course she did. Luke tightened a screw. There is one more thing. She waited. One of the pediatric therapy rooms could be named for Rachel. His hand stopped. No. Amelia had expected resistance. She worked with families during her treatment. That does not mean her name belongs on a wall. It would not be a memorial. Luke set the tool down. What would it be? A room for children whose parents are receiving long-term care, counseling, meals, tutoring, a place where they do not have to pretend they are not scared. Luke looked away. Amelia continued carefully. Sophie told me Rachel spent time with other children in hospital waiting rooms. She did. She made paper animals out of old appointment forms. Luke's mouth moved with the beginning of a smile. They were terrible. Sophie says they were art. Sophie lies about art. Amelia stepped closer. Rachel's name would not be there because she died. Luke looked at her. It would be there because of what she did while she was alive. He did not answer that day. A week later, he left a photograph on Amelia's desk. Rachel stood beneath a maple tree laughing into the autumn wind. On the back, Luke had written one sentence. Use this one. 6 months after the fire, the Open Harbor Mobility Center opened on the renovated executive floor. The long dining tables were gone. The private wine room had become a sensory therapy space. Walls that once separated executives from employees had been replaced by wide doors and open treatment rooms. Early morning sunlight moved across the polished floor. Luke arrived before 7 in a clean blue shirt. He carried a toolbox because he did not trust contractors to finish anything correctly. Sophie followed in a yellow cardigan with the ceremonial scissors in both hands. You are holding them backward, Luke said. I am making sure no one steals them. No one wants giant ribbon scissors. You do not know rich people. Luke looked at her. Who taught you to talk like that? Sophie pointed across the room. Amelia entered through the main doors using a silver walking frame. Her hair was tied back. She wore a simple cream suit and flat shoes. Luke forgot what he had been about to say. Sophie noticed. You are doing the staring thing. I am looking. For too long. Amelia reached them. Her movement was slower than it had been before the fire. Every few steps she paused to make sure her left foot had landed where she intended. She no longer apologized for the pause. You came early, Luke said. So did you. I work here. So do I. Sophie lifted the scissors. I am the most important person today. Amelia nodded. That was never in question. Patient staff members, firefighters, and families gathered near the entrance. Reporters remained behind a marked line at Amelia's request. There was no stage, no dramatic lighting, only a blue ribbon stretched across the wide clinic doors. Before the ceremony, Luke walked through the Rachel Mercer family room alone. The photograph Amelia had chosen hung near the entrance. Rachel stood beneath the maple tree, her face turned toward someone outside the frame. Luke remembered taking the picture. Sophie had been running through fallen leaves. Rachel had called for her to slow down, then laughed because she knew Sophie would not. A small table beneath the photograph held colored paper. A child had already folded a crooked blue bird. Luke touched one wing. Amelia stood quietly in the doorway. You can still change your mind, she said. No. He looked around the room. She would have liked this. Amelia came closer. I hope so. She would have corrected the furniture. What is wrong with it? Nothing. Then why would she correct it? She liked correcting things. Amelia smiled. I would have liked her. Luke looked at Rachel's photograph. She would have liked you too. The answer carried more weight than either of them acknowledged. Voices gathered in the hallway. Luke turned toward the door. Amelia reached for his hand. Only for a second. He let her. At the ribbon, Amelia faced the crowd. She had prepared a speech. The pages remained folded in her pocket. This building once taught us how easily titles can hide cowardice, she said, and how easily uniforms can hide courage. Luke looked down. Sophie elbowed him gently. Amelia continued. This center exists, so no one who needs help will be asked to prove that their pain is respectable. Her hand tightened around the walking frame. We will not always know how someone arrived at our doors. We will know only that they deserve to enter. She turned toward Luke. Mr. Mercer. He shook his head. No. Sophie grabbed his hand. Yes. She pulled him beside Amelia. The crowd laughed softly. Luke stood on Amelia's right. Sophie positioned herself between them with the scissors. Ready, she asked. Amelia nodded. Luke said, "Watch your fingers." Sophie cut the ribbon. The doors opened. Patients entered before the cameras. That had been Amelia's only demand. The first was a teenage boy recovering from a spinal injury after a football accident. He moved with forearm crutches while his mother walked beside him. The second was an older veteran wearing a faded army cap. The third was a little girl who stared at the therapy equipment with suspicion. Sophie approached her. "I tested everything." The girl looked at the walking frame. "Does it hurt?" Sometimes, Sophie said, though she had never used it, "but they let you stop." The girl nodded as though that mattered most. Throughout the afternoon, Amelia moved from room to room. She spoke with therapists, patients, and families. She did not ask photographers to capture her walking. When her leg tired, she used a wheelchair. Luke watched from across the clinic while explaining an emergency release mechanism to a group of engineers. He noticed how Amelia listened when people spoke now. Not with the stillness of an executive waiting to respond, with attention. When a patient's mother cried in the hallway, Amelia sat beside her on a bench. She did not offer a promise. She stayed. By evening, the center had emptied. Sophie was in the family room helping Tessa fold paper animals. Luke found Amelia alone in the main therapy space. She stood between two parallel rails, her walking frame several feet behind her. "You should be resting," he said. "You sound like my therapist." "Your therapist is correct. She usually is." "It is irritating." Luke leaned against the wall. Amelia placed both hands on the rails. "I want to reach the other end. You already did this morning with the frame. That still counts, I know." She looked at him. "I want to try without it." Luke moved closer. "How is the leg tired?" "Pain 4, numbness some." He stopped several feet away. "Then go slowly." Amelia took one step. Her left foot trembled when it touched the floor. She breathed. Another step. Luke watched her shoulders, the angle of her hip, the tension in her hands. Halfway down the rails, her knee weakened. He moved. Amelia raised one hand. Not yet. Luke stopped immediately. She tightened her grip on the rail. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was her breathing. Then the leg steadied. Amelia continued. At the final section, she released one rail. Luke did not move. She released the other. The distance between them was less than 6 feet. It felt longer than the stairwell. Amelia took one unsupported step. Her body tilted. She corrected. Another step. Luke's hands remained at his sides. She reached him. He looked at her. "You made it." Amelia shook her head. "That is not the part that matters." What does she look back at the walking frame? "I spent years believing the only acceptable way to arrive was without help." Luke waited. "I needed to stop being ashamed of how I got here." His expression softened. "That sounds harder." It was. From the doorway, clapping began. Sophie stood beside Tessa. "You were supposed to pretend not to watch," Amelia said. "I was quiet." "That is not the same thing." Sophie ran across the room and hugged her carefully. Luke looked toward Tessa. "You encourage this. I deny everything." Later, after Sophie had eaten 2 pieces of leftover cake and declared the opening successful, the 3 of them walked through the rooftop garden. Clouds moved low over Seattle. The city lights reflected in the lake below. Amelia used her cane. Luke walked beside her without touching her. He had learned the rhythm of her steps. Not to slow down before she did. Not to reach unless she asked. Sophie ran ahead, inspecting the small lights along the path. Rain began as a fine mist. They stopped beneath a covered terrace. Amelia looked toward the tower windows. "The first time you held me, I thought it was the worst moment of my life." Luke leaned against the railing. "You insulted my jacket. It smelled like motor oil. It was a maintenance jacket. It still smells like motor oil. You kept it for 3 weeks. My keys were not in it." "I know." She looked at him. "You knew I checked." Amelia laughed. The sound faded into the rain. Luke watched her. Their relationship had grown in pieces. Coffee after board meetings, arguments over clinic budgets. Sophie's school presentation, where Amelia sat in the front row and Luke arrived 10 minutes early. A dinner in Luke's apartment where the smoke detector went off because Amelia burned garlic bread. A therapy appointment where Luke waited in the lobby because Amelia had asked him to come, then refused to enter the treatment room until she invited him. Nothing between them had been sudden. Even the silence now felt earned. Amelia looked toward Sophie. "She is pretending not to watch us." Luke glanced down the path. Sophie immediately turned toward a planter. She is bad at it. She gets that from you. I am excellent at pretending. No. Amelia stepped closer. You are excellent at carrying things alone. Luke looked at the rain beyond the terrace. So are you. I am trying to stop. He turned back to her. So am I. Amelia rested both hands on the cane. In the ambulance bay, you said you came back because I was there. I remember. And now Luke looked toward Sophie, then at Amelia. Now I keep coming back because you are here. The words were quiet. They did not need more. Amelia closed the distance between them. Luke waited as he had in the stairwell at the hospital and beside the therapy rails. She lifted one hand to his face. Then she kissed him. The kiss was gentle and unhurried. Luke's hand settled at her waist, steady, without holding too tightly. Amelia felt the rain cooling the air around them, and the warmth of him beneath her palm. Nothing disappeared. Rachel remained part of Luke's life. Amelia's leg still hurt. The company still faced lawsuits and years of repair. Luke still woke from dreams he did not discuss. None of it made the moment smaller. Sophie's voice traveled across the garden. Are you two being weird again? Luke rested his forehead briefly against Amelia's. Constantly. Sophie walked back toward them. I knew it. You knew nothing, Luke said. I drew the heart. It was emergency design, Amelia reminded her. Sophie smiled. Exactly. They started toward the rooftop exit. Amelia's cane tapped against the wet stone. Halfway across the garden, her left foot caught. Her balance shifted. Luke did not grab her. Amelia reached for his hand. He took it. Sophie moved to her other side. Below them, the lights of the Open Harbor Mobility Center remained on. Through the tall windows, a patient practiced taking one careful step between the rails. Luke, Amelia, and Sophie walked toward the door together. No one carried anyone. No one walked alone.